This is going to be a difficult analysis because last deal, when I scrapped Valentine's Half Month 6, postponing it for this deal, this was originally going to be one of my reviews. My Life as a Teenage Robot, Dancing with My Shell, since I've been considering on reviewing this episode for quite some time, and looking back at this episode, especially since after watching Sarcastic Chorus's video centering around the problem with Jenny x Sheldon, those are reasons why I do not enjoy his content, especially since this isn't the only time I brought up his videos. I did brought up his Dippo and Wendy video. Well, he only focuses on one character rather than both, because after watching this video, despite me agreeing his opinions, I seriously need to have second thoughts when it comes to watching his videos, because with him focusing on one character rather than both, honestly, those are reasons as to why I'm not against Sheldon or anti-ing him in the point of view of Sarcastic Chorus. Yes, he attempted to buy Jenny. Yes, he's a stalker. Yes, he did a catfish scenario when it comes to this episode in particular, along with breaking and entering among other things, but this is a prime example onto why that a character sipping a female character too much to an extent really gave me second thoughts, considering that when you're focusing on one character rather than both characters, you instantly try way too hard to make the other character better, when in reality, it doesn't change the fact that the flaws, while every other character has flaws, can still showcase the worst in them. Which leads to the contender against Dancing with My Shell, Weapons of Mass Distraction. This episode, I've been looking through a couple reviews because I didn't see a lot of opinions towards this episode that this is considered one of the worst episodes. For me personally, it's not one of the worst episodes, and I do consider on reviewing this episode, but thinking about it now, knowing full well that Jenny's life as a superhero is something that she just wants to have downtime with a guy that is into him, mainly Travis, in this episode, it doesn't really change the fact that the execution of this episode really showcases the type of character that Jenny is, even though that the case of her being a superhero is understandable. It really makes it difficult to believe that the biggest issue that I've seen involving these romance episodes when it comes to My Life as a Teenage Robot is that there was a lack of communication that barely processes the characters themselves, and looking at Sheldon only doesn't really make me see the issues that I've seen of these episodes. Dancing with My Shell centers around Jenny desperately wanting to go to the Sadie Hawkins dance because she'll get the chance to pick out a boy, but her mother refused, so when she talks to Sheldon that she can't be able to pick a boy, Sheldon tells him to pick the silver shell because he's a robot. And after they go to the Sadie Hawkins dance, the Space Biker's Appeal, which honestly is supposed to be Sheldon's predicament, considering that the last episode that centers around the silver shell, well, he was in it, he made a fool out of himself, but in this episode, honestly, regardless of what Sarcastic Chorus says involving Sheldon not capable of talking to people, especially reading off of comic books inside of the silver shell, it doesn't even change the fact that in Weapons of Mass Distraction, Jenny lacks the same thing, even if the scenario and predicament that she's in is different. In this episode, a new kid named Travis appears, and it's implied, not really implied, but it's revealed that Travis is extremely afraid of mechanics. It doesn't matter if it's a robot or machinery, if it's mechanic, he's extremely afraid of, because that's how his father got completely injured. Honestly, it doesn't really explain the trauma involving his own experiences, but then again, if any other father or mother were put into this scenario, no matter how ridiculous it is, it kind of makes sense. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, Travis's introduction would have made this episode more better, but at the same time, considering that Jenny needs to carry the episode, it's basically the same scenario of Sheldon carrying Dancing with My Shell, in regards of him carrying the other episodes that could lead to problematic issues centering around his character. What I really don't like in Dancing with My Shell is the fact that Jenny is always placed in the sidelines, which, even if it's supposed to be intentional in Dancing with My Shell, I can't be able to buy it due to the fact that what Jenny goes through in the season 3 episode, I would feel sympathy towards her, but at the same time, she's having the same disability of Sheldon, while she's not expressing on the fact that she is a superhero. And when Travis figures this out towards the end, honestly, that really sums up a lot that I'm focusing on other aspects rather than just one character alone. I need to point this out in case if anyone isn't aware. 4 years ago, I reviewed Shell Game, and I did address on the fact that Sheldon was doing a terrible idea by using the Silver Shell as a disguise. Well, once he reveals himself in front of Jenny, it would have made Jenny more furious. However, since I've stated in that review that the Silver Shell was revealed that Sheldon was controlling it in front of Jenny, it happened off screen. And the only time where the Silver Shell returned after this episode is, well, Sheldon made a robot exclusively for Tuck. Honestly, there's also lack of communication when it comes to Jenny and the Silver Shell if you ignore Sheldon's presence. I really wanted to side with Jenny when it comes to her having some downtime without going through any scenarios involving stopping bad guys, since that whole life as a teenage robot is complicated, and the fact that she really wants a boyfriend and Sheldon shouldn't be her boyfriend. But at times, whenever she is with someone and whenever she tries to do something, honestly, it's really difficult to consider if she's really for that person when it comes to communication. Because whenever she tries to hang out with Travis, when it comes to something bad going on, she isn't even attempting to handle the situation that she is in control with, while also controlling the situation by stopping bad guys. Like, is it really that difficult for her to express that she is a superhero to Travis, and her being normal in front of Travis would instantly make things better? Because the idea of her being girly isn't something I would consider Jenny being somewhat smart about. Like, it's one thing to be normal in front of someone who's extremely afraid of electronics, which is a good ideal, but at the same time, when they're not even attempting to make Jenny somewhat smart in order to make her handle the situation on her own, it's kind of ironic that Sheldon is attempting to control the situation. But the difference is, despite controlling the Silver Shell and trying to be a superhero inside the Silver Shell, Sheldon isn't a superhero, And in all honesty, with him being put into this predicament of saving lives as the Silver Shell, at the same time, it's not really his responsibility when it comes to the Space Spikers completely invading the Sadie Hawkins dance. Because what Sheldon did in this, in comparison to him defending Jenny in front of Dawn Prima in the last Silver Shell episode, is horrible, because it kind of showcases the type of character that Sheldon is actually selfish. In this, he is attempting to have Jenny on her good side. Granted, it's one thing on the fact that what happens towards the end is problematic involving Sheldon's character, but at the same time, he didn't mean to throw Jenny through a disco ball. And the fact that he wasn't responsible of making everyone in the Sadie Hawkins dance leave because it was the Space Spikers' fault. Honestly, the biggest reason onto why I don't root against Sheldon in this episode is the fact of how they portrayed Jenny in this. Now, honestly, it's understandable that she wants to have some downtime, and this is the perfect opportunity for her to have some downtime in order to pick the boy of her choosing. But considering that the lack of communication issue is intact in this episode, it really gave me the impression that Jenny thinks that the Silver Shell is the one who kicked everyone out, but not thinking that the Space Spikers were the ones who caused it in the first place. When she takes control of the situation, I can't be able to side with her, because this episode tries way too hard to make Jenny in the right, while at the same time it's not attempting to make Sheldon any worse than any of his other appearances that I've seen from this show. The biggest reason onto why I'm comparing this episode to Weapons of Mass Distraction is because whenever Sheldon is the main character of the episode, it always depicts him in the wrong while Jenny is always in the right. Which at times I would understand, but when it goes a little too literal when it comes to Sheldon taking control of the situation and not being aware of what he's doing, or because Jenny isn't being extremely honest with him. Honestly, whenever you look at a Jenny episode like this, you always see Jenny trying to take control of the situation, but without Sheldon, you're supposed to root for her to win the boyfriend, but at the same time, you can instantly see on the fact that when she gets into her bad side, she doesn't usually get called out when it comes to her behavior. And when Travis did that, at times it's supposed to be dissolved, but due to the poor execution of Jenny not telling Travis that she's a superhero, it's kind of like the same reaction she had towards the end of Dancing with Michelle, which in all honesty, despite the different circumstances and plot, the similarities are still there, to the point that is it really difficult for me to consider Travis as being in the right while he's being placed in the scenario while he's just ends up becoming a tool for Jenny in the same ways of Jenny being a tool to Sheldon. Honestly, there's a reason onto why I've been considering on reviewing this episode for quite some time, and it's honestly difficult to consider this episode as Jenny being in the right most of the time. Plus, the ending of Weapons of Mass Distraction is rushed. Mainly the fact that with Travis calling out Jenny, and this just leads to Jenny being completely just depressed that she'll never get a boyfriend, and this just leads to Brad appearing that he didn't appear whatsoever throughout the entirety of the episode. He tells Jenny to be herself because things would have probably worked out, but at the same time, Jenny pushed Brad. Some people applied that Brad is a better boyfriend to Jenny than Sheldon, and at times it may make sense, but considering of how Jenny just doesn't want to admit that she is wrong when someone like Brad isn't really criticizing her that much in the same ways as what Travis just did. Honestly, it's difficult for me to root against Brad, considering even though that he's mainly used as a tool in this, it doesn't change the fact that what he says still sums up of what Jenny should have done throughout the entirety of this episode, all the while making Travis more understanding towards her, because, in all honesty, if someone tried to reason with her in Dancing with Michelle, and Sheldon manages to do it inside of the silver shell machine, then honestly, this just proves to me that she would probably prove everyone wrong but herself. Like, there's a reason onto why I have a difficult time considering on reviewing Dancing with Michelle, all the while considering it as an episode that I'm supposed to side with Jenny, mainly the fact that the issues that I've seen involving this episode have been growing to the point that doing this analysis now instead of reviewing this episode last year is honestly the best choice. Look, I'm not doing this analysis project for the sake of anti-ing Jenny, because that was never my intent, even if I only reviewed Dancing with Michelle. Because when Sarcastic Chorus antis Sheldon, he is trying way too hard to the point that with him being the most important opinion other than mine, really makes me feel a little uncomfortable from his videos. Regardless if he brings up Stalker attempting to buy Jenny, which in all honesty, if Sheldon attempted to buy Jenny, I'm pretty sure that Jenny would decline. The whole catfish thing that ends up happening back off screen somehow, among others. It just makes me to believe that regardless of these issues, really makes the Sheldon episodes aged poorly. At the same time, I can't even say for a fact that I would ever considered Sarcastic Chorus as a reliable source if his opinions is just mainly being way more important, which really makes me to believe that he is somewhat like Jenny in this show, to where I can't tell if his videos are mainly for comedic effect, or mainly his opinions stating major facts that just makes his videos a little uncomfortable, but not in the way of what he describes the male characters. Look, I'm not saying that Sarcastic Chorus is a terrible person, because if he has a girlfriend in real life, I know full well that that girlfriend isn't perfect, and he wouldn't judge her or expose her on social media, because that's not the type of person that he is. But when it comes to videos that he makes centering around shipping, where he only focuses on one character the most, there's a reason onto why Dipper, Finn, including Sheldon, aren't those characters that I root against, all because of his videos, if he's just only focusing on those characters rather than including the other characters. I am aware that he did talk about age gaps and the fact that he's a shipper of Princess Bubblegum and Marceline, and even if I'm maybe the odd one out, that doesn't automatically mean that I accept literally every other decision that the show did when it comes to characters. Because if that is literally the solution when it comes to showcasing that the characters are mostly in the white, then there's another reason onto why that Jenny being in the white most of the time, despite the fact that she is not dealing with any age gap situations, it doesn't change the fact of what Sheldon did in Dancing with Michelle is his least worst. Yes, he was planning to catfish Jenny, which I'm fully aware of. And yes, he is not immune when it comes to the poor communication, while he's not thinking clearly of what Jenny actually meant. But at the same time, it's kind of difficult if the show is really exploring the fact that Sheldon is the only character that Jenny should be with, and even if it's not doing a good job at it, it's not really doing a good job of making Jenny a better person by finding someone who is better than Sheldon, to the point that if Sarcastic Chorus is completely fine, that the show is cancelled, that it didn't lead to Sheldon and Jenny coming together because that was the original plans, I can't be able to look into the type of boyfriends that would have been suitable for her when it comes to a robot acting like a dog. Don Prima concerning about his shoes. Honestly, what other character that can be better than each other when they're having these issues? This is the world building that is supposed to be different than any other cartoon, but when it comes to characters, it just makes it difficult for me to be on board on Jenny being in the right, while every other character is way more over the top. Granted, not all of them are terrible people, but at the same time, their execution really sums up a lot that this show, well, people are looking at the goods, they mostly enjoy the comedy, but when you take the show seriously, it's not really funny at all. I'm not saying that the entire show is directionless, but when you focus on the characters more when it comes to the decisions, it kind of makes it difficult to take the comedy seriously, all the while that the execution of these two episodes does showcase of those more going on rather than just one sophisticated character. So with that out of the way, with this also being Cartoon Crisis 3 material, despite the fact that I've been continuing Cartoon Crisis 3 for about 2 years, which episode is considered worse when it comes to characters? Honestly, I can't really give Sheldon a point, because regardless of what he did in this, honestly, it's difficult to root for him when it comes to the catfish scenario that he would have caused if it didn't happen off screen. It doesn't change the fact of what Jenny did in Weapons of Mass Distraction is any better. Even if you are never going to see Sheldon's point of view when it comes to the negatives overweighing the positives, I really feel like that whenever I look at the positives in his character, even if it's not much better than his negatives, it really gave me the impression that if he was in a different cartoon crushing on a girl, then I would probably root against him if that character isn't Jenny. That's just basically the reality that I've seen when it comes to Sheldon's personality, despite being a stalker and almost committing catfish in front of Jenny. I wish I would plan on reviewing more episodes centering around Sheldon's character if I get the chance, but if I do, I would probably find different scenarios on trying to see the reasonings of his decisions rather than just thinking of him being a stalker, because regardless if stalkers are an issue in the real world that shouldn't be ignored, I don't even think that Sheldon is that worse of a stalker compared to real-life stalkers. And even if his portrayal as being a stalker is still problematic, and it does showcase the worst in him, I can't be able to see him as the issue anymore, especially after watching Sarcastic Chorus's video, mainly of him rather than him and Jenny. With that being said, I'm giving Dancing with Michelle a 4 out of 10, while Weapons of Mass Distraction gets a 3 out of 10. I'm not anti-Jenny. Well, if I did review Dancing with Michelle, nearly 8 years ago when I started my YouTube channel, it would have been more outdated compared to the other outdated videos that I did back then. This episode, when it comes to weapons of mass distraction, is almost becoming 20 years old, while Dancing with My Shell just became 20 years old days ago. If I really reviewed these episodes way ahead of time, then I'm pretty sure I would not get an understanding involving the world building of My Life as a Teenage Robot, along with its characters too well. I really had a difficult understanding when it comes to the later seasons. Well, the fourth season is mainly my comfort zone, but then again, finalization isn't avoidable when it comes to My Life as a Teenage Robot, and regardless if Jenny didn't go through finalization, there are still ways to make her character better, and Weapons of Mass Distraction isn't one of them.